Could a single policy decision trigger an economic meltdown in the United States? It sounds extreme, but cutting-edge AI has just delivered a stark warning about mass deportations, predicting economic consequences far more severe than most people imagine. This isn't just about border security. We're talking about your job, your groceries, and the stability of the entire nation. In this video, we'll unpack the AI's alarming forecast, revealing the specific industries at risk, the price hikes you can expect, and the surprising ways mass deportations could impact your wallet. You won't want to miss this eye-opening analysis of a potential economic disaster. So, what sectors of the US economy are most vulnerable to mass deportations? AI analysis points to agriculture, construction, and hospitality as the hardest hit. These are the backbone industries that keep America running, and they all share a critical reliance on immigrant labor. Think about it. Who harvests the fruits and vegetables you eat every day? Who builds the houses and offices where you live and work? Who staffs the restaurants and hotels you rely on for meals and travel? Often, the answer is immigrant workers, many of whom are undocumented. These are not just random jobs, they are essential roles, often physically demanding and lower paying, that many native-born Americans simply aren't lining up to fill. Without this dedicated workforce, these sectors face immediate and critical shortages, threatening to disrupt the entire American economy. Consider the agricultural sector. Farms across the nation depend heavily on immigrant labor to plant, cultivate, and harvest crops. From California's fruit orchards to the vast fields of the Midwest, undocumented workers are essential to the food supply chain. If millions of these workers are deported, farms will struggle to find replacements regardless of wage increases. Many of these agricultural jobs are physically demanding, seasonal, and located in rural areas, making them unattractive to many domestic workers. The AI predicts that mass deportations could trigger significant food shortages as crops rot in the fields unharvested and send grocery prices skyrocketing, impacting every American family's budget. The construction industry, another pillar of the US economy, would also face crippling blows. Immigrants, including the undocumented, make up a significant portion of the construction workforce, filling crucial roles in building homes, infrastructure, and commercial buildings. From framing houses to pouring concrete to roofing skyscrapers, immigrant workers are on the front lines of building America. Deporting them would shrink the labor pool dramatically, leading to project delays, increased labor costs, and ultimately, higher housing costs. In a market already struggling with housing affordability, mass deportations would pour fuel on the fire, further exacerbating the housing crisis and making homeownership even more out of reach for middle-class families. The hospitality sector, encompassing restaurants, hotels, and cleaning services, is equally vulnerable. These businesses rely heavily on immigrant workers, often in back-of-house roles like kitchen staff, housekeepers, and groundskeepers. These are essential service jobs that keep our daily lives running smoothly, from enjoying a meal out to having a clean hotel room during travel. Mass deportations would create massive staff shortages in these sectors. Businesses would be forced to raise wages to attract replacement workers, cut services, or even close down entirely. The result? Everyday services would become more expensive, less accessible, and potentially lower in quality, impacting everyone who relies on these industries. This isn't just about businesses struggling, it's about everyday Americans feeling the pinch in their wallets and experiencing disruptions in their daily routines. But how much could prices actually increase? Are we talking pennies or something far more significant? The AI breaks down the potential price hikes with alarming specificity, moving beyond general concerns to provide concrete examples of how mass deportations would impact your daily expenses. In agriculture, as labor costs surge by an estimated 40 to 70% due to the need to replace deported workers with higher-paid domestic labor, these costs will inevitably be passed on to consumers. The American Farm Bureau Federation estimates this could translate to a 5 to 10% increase in your grocery bill. Think about it. A $2 head of lettuce could become $2.20, and a $3.50 carton of strawberries might jump to $4 or even higher. These seemingly small increases across many grocery items add up significantly over time, straining household budgets, especially for lower and middle-income families. In the construction industry, the impact on housing costs would be equally dramatic. With immigrants making up nearly a quarter of the U.S. construction workforce, their mass deportation would shrink the labor supply, forcing builders to pay significantly higher wages to attract replacement workers or face costly project delays. The AI predicts that the labor cost increase alone could add $15,000 to $30,000 to the price of a typical new home. This price surge would further inflate already high housing prices, making home ownership even more unattainable for many Americans and worsening the affordability crisis. The hospitality and service sectors would also see significant price increases. Restaurants and hotels, already operating on thin margins, would be forced to raise menu prices and room rates to offset increased labor costs and staff shortages. Restaurant menu prices could rise by an estimated 10 to 15%, meaning your $15 burger and fries might suddenly cost $17 or more. Hotel room rates could increase by $10 to $20 per night, making travel more expensive for both business and leisure travelers. Even essential services like childcare and cleaning would become more costly. Many families rely on immigrant workers for affordable childcare and housekeeping. Mass deportations would lead to wage hikes in these sectors, increasing costs by 20 to 30%. For instance, weekly childcare fees could jump from $200 to $250 or more, putting a significant strain on household budgets and forcing families to make difficult choices. The AI's detailed forecast reveals a very real and significant increase in the cost of living for average families across numerous sectors, impacting everything from food to housing to everyday services. Beyond these direct price increases and sector-specific impacts, what about the bigger picture? What are the overall economic costs of such a massive operation on a national scale? The AI estimates the direct cost of mass deportations, just for the government to carry out the deportations themselves, could reach a staggering $300 to $400 billion over several years. This colossal sum includes the immense expenses associated with detaining millions of people, processing their cases through the legal system, transporting them out of the country, and building up the vast enforcement infrastructure required for such a massive undertaking. This figure doesn't even account for the broader economic damage caused by labor shortages and price increases. It's purely the direct cost to the government of implementing mass deportations. This massive expenditure, ranging from $300 to $400 billion, would inevitably necessitate some difficult financial choices for the U.S. government. Such a huge sum would likely require reallocating funds from vital public programs that Americans rely on, such as education, infrastructure, or healthcare. Alternatively, the government might be forced to increase taxes across the board to cover these extraordinary deportation costs. Either way, the AI predicts that mass deportations would place a direct and significant financial burden on American taxpayers. Whether it's through cuts to valued public services or increased taxes, everyday American families would ultimately bear a significant share of the overall cost of mass deportations, further straining household finances and potentially impacting the quality of public services they rely on. The AI paints a clear and concerning picture. Mass deportations are not just a social and humanitarian issue. They represent a massive drain on the economy and a heavy burden on taxpayer money, diverting resources from other crucial areas and potentially impacting the financial well-being of American citizens. To truly understand the potential real-world consequences, it's helpful to look at historical examples. While the scale of deportations discussed is unprecedented in U.S. history, we can examine past events that involved significant labor disruptions or immigration policy shifts to gain insights. For example, during World War I and World War II, labor shortages in agriculture and manufacturing led to significant economic adjustments and price increases. While not directly comparable to mass deportations, these historical periods demonstrate how disruptions to the labor force can ripple through the economy. Similarly, some economists point to the Operation Wetback, deportations in the 1950s, as having had negative impacts on certain agricultural sectors in the short term, although the long-term economic effects are debated. Examining these historical precedents, while imperfect, can provide a tangible sense of the potential for economic disruption that AI is forecasting with mass deportations. These historical examples underscore that large-scale labor force changes have real economic consequences, and the AI's predictions are not simply abstract theories, but are grounded in economic principles and historical patterns. Ignoring these historical lessons would be a grave mistake, repeating past errors with potentially devastating consequences. Now, it's important to acknowledge that there are counter-arguments to the AI's predictions. Some might argue that mass deportations would create job opportunities for native-born Americans, boosting domestic employment and wages. They might also argue that stricter immigration enforcement is necessary for national security or to reduce the strain on social services. These are valid points in the broader immigration debate, but the AI's economic analysis suggests that the immediate and large-scale economic disruptions caused by mass deportations would likely outweigh any potential long-term benefits in terms of domestic job creation. The AI emphasizes that the industries most affected rely on a specific type of labor that is not easily replaceable in the short term, and that simply raising wages may not be enough to attract domestic workers to these physically demanding and often geographically isolated jobs quickly enough to avoid major economic shocks. It's also crucial to remember that economic forecasts, even those generated by AI, are not guarantees of the future. Economic models are based on assumptions and data, and real-world outcomes can be influenced by numerous unforeseen factors. However, the AI's predictions serve as a serious warning, highlighting the potential for significant economic harm if mass deportations are pursued on a large scale. Ignoring these data-driven forecasts would be economically risky. So, what is the smarter path forward? The AI recommends a balanced approach, a strategy that is both effective and humane, and avoids the economic pitfalls of mass deportations. First, prioritize targeted deportations of individuals who pose genuine public safety threats, those with serious criminal records. This addresses legitimate public safety concerns without resorting to indiscriminate mass removals. Second, create clear and accessible pathways to legal status for the vast majority of undocumented immigrants who are contributing to the economy and communities. This provides stability for businesses, protects families, and recognizes the economic reality of immigrant labor. Third, invest in modern border security technology and streamline legal immigration processes to manage future immigration flows effectively and humanely. Finally, expand guest worker programs to meet industry demands and enforce penalties on employers who violate labor laws. This comprehensive strategy offers a way to enforce immigration laws responsibly while safeguarding the American economy and upholding American values. The AI's analysis is clear and concerning. Mass deportations are not just a political talking point or a simple policy proposal. They are a potential economic disaster waiting to happen. The AI has laid out the data, predicted the consequences, and offered a more sensible path forward. The question is, are we willing to ignore this stark warning and risk triggering a self-inflicted economic wound?